Good morning and welcome to episode 5 of the Vipers in the Ivy Fantasy Suiting Project. I'm Benjamin, and this is the Benjamin Krudwig channel. um, I'm a textile artist, I am a fashion designer, and I just like sharing this stuff on the internet with y'all. And we are midway through the project of working on the Vipers in the Ivy jacket. This is basically a redo of a jacket that I made a few years ago when I first learned how to weave and how to sew. And I wanted to give it a good retry. Like, I wanted to see how far my skills have come since the very first time that I did this project, and my ideas are more fully fleshed out for this version of the project as well. At this point, we have made the fabric, we have made the muslin pattern for the mock-up pattern for the jacket itself. Um, I'm thrilled with how the mock-up came out. Absolutely thrilled. It fits perfectly, and I made a couple of adjustments that I'm actually very confident in them working. So that I'm not worried about. I am ready to actually start cutting into fashion fabric and flatlining all of the pieces, and I'm really excited. So it's time. I'm gonna scoot him out of the way so I can show you what we're going to be doing in this video. So um, here's a little sample swatch. It turned out so good. Look. So here's the fashion fabric on one side. And then on the other side is my liner fabric. I was supposed to do a fashion show in early 2020. I wonder what happened. And the title of that show is called Vivarium. And I wanted all of the garments to be inspired by deadly plants, poisonous plants. So I created a liner or a satin pattern. I made a fabric pattern. This is satin. I made a fabric pattern that had a bunch of different poisonous plants on it. So there's monk's hood, also known as wolfsbane, poison ivy, and then I also have some belladonna in here, which is really cool. It's deadly nightshade. Um, so I decided I have quite a bit of yardage of this fabric. So I might as well use it as the liner for this jacket, as well as for the vest when I get there. And so what I did was I took my pattern piece and I cut it out of muslin, laid it on top of the fashion fabric with the wrong sides facing together. That's important. The wrong sides facing together, and I hand basted down the edges while flattening the fabric, smoothing it out, and making sure that it's fully flat. This is called flat lining. After I did that, I took the satin and then the fashion fabric muslin sandwich, put them together right sides facing together, and stitched that by hand. I did all this by hand. I'm going to sew this whole jacket by hand. I thought about bringing out my machine, but I'm just far more comfortable and confident in my hand sewing skills with this kind of fabric. It's hand woven after all. I might as well hand sew this whole thing. So once the liner and the exterior fabric, the fashion fabric sandwich, are stitched together, flip it inside out, and you get a fully lined flat piece. So flat lining is just basically the reinforcement bit. It's putting the linen, the cotton, a heavy duty wool. You can pretty much use most stiffer fabrics. A woven is what I would recommend. If you try to use a knit, it's going to be too stretchy. You're not going to get any structure. But something like a cotton or a linen, where it's plant fiber or a bast fiber, depending on what you want to call it, um, those have more structure in them, and they're not going to stretch or distort as much as you would a natural, like a wool fiber, a plant fiber, or a knit fabric. So just keep that in mind if you're going to do this kind of thing. I'm just using cotton canvas. It's thick enough for what I need it to do. It's undyed, which is great, and it's lightweight without losing structure. So I'm really, really excited about how the whole fabric or the whole jacket's going to look with this technique. A couple of concerns that I have. There's going to be a couple of pretty large swaths of fabric on the back that aren't going to have a lot of stitching, so I may have to baste some of those to keep them flat. But I think it'll be fine because this back panel actually... let's just do this. This back panel here, the pattern piece has now been slashed down the middle, and it has an inch of extra fabric on each side at this point. That's the new fabric or the new pattern piece. I didn't originally want a seam going down the back of this, but I wanted a vent. So I figured might as well just bake that into the pattern. And I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. But I am concerned that some of these larger swaths of fabric are going to wrinkle, but I think I might just have to baste them down. The other thing that I'm going to need to do is make the scales, the dragon scales for the sleeve caps, and it's quite a large swath of fabric. It's a pretty large square on each corner that is going to get reduced due to the smocking technique. Hi. So yeah, so those are what you're going to be seeing. Oh, there we go. So yeah, that's what you're going to be seeing in this video. I'm going to take it kind of more chill in this video, where I won't talk a whole lot in this video. I'm just going to cut and sew and baste and stitch, and it should be indicative of what I'm doing. I might post two versions of this video, one with commentary and one without, just because I figure we're headed into winter. I'm starting this video mid-December. Um, episode 4 should be up already at this point if you're watching this video. So yeah, I'm headed into late December and into January, and I've just got the feeling of being cozy. And I thought, why not make a video that's just cozy sewing vibes? So that's what this one is going to be. It's going to start out with me cutting out the muslin pattern pieces or the cotton canvas pattern pieces, getting out my fashion fabric and placing all of my pattern pieces, cutting those out, basting each one together, and doing just a good job of flatlining all of them, and then hand line all of them with the satin, and then sewing the pattern pieces together. And then of course I also need to do the smocking with the Textile fashion fabric. So that'll be in this video as well. You've seen me do the smocking technique, and I think it was episode 2 of this, so I'm not going to go over that again. You're just going to see it happen in this video. So thank you all so much for joining along in this video. Sit back and relax, and if you haven't already yet, give this video a thumbs up and give this channel a subscribe. That way you'll be notified every time I add more to this particular project or other projects that I'm working on. So enjoy this video. I will see you all at the end. It is time. All right. I am thrilled to announce that it is time for me to cut out the pattern pieces in the fashion fabric. And I'm so excited and a little nervous, but mostly excited. Yeah, so the big things that I'm doing when I'm cutting this out primarily is I need the scales to be going all the right direction. So I have all the pieces here lined up with the tops over here and the bottoms over here. So I'm gonna need my fabric to also be going that direction. I also need to choose a wrong side and a right side on this fabric, but honestly, because this was a pointed twill and it was an even balanced pointed twill, the front and the back are essentially identical. So I don't think I really need to worry too much about that. I am going to try to avoid this patch up here unless I can catch it in a seam, but I'm excited to get going here. The other thing I need to do, so I've stacked these up in order of how they'll be sewn together, but what I want is to cut them out. Let's see. I want to cut them out so they are near the same pattern piece. So like these are the front lapels, here are the front cuffs, not cuffs, front panels. And I want them to look like they're cut from the same cloth, literally, because they are. So I am going to try and do that as much as I can going up the fabric. That does make me think I'm going to waste more fabric than I like. But I also need to flop this around because the scales are going that way. So, yes, these are the things I'm thinking about. Gonna have to be very, very careful with all of my yardage here. But this is all I've got. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and start cutting the stuff out. I'm gonna pin things together, obviously. And then once that's done, I'm gonna start basting and sewing each piece. I'm gonna baste all of the pieces first, then get the liner, and then I'll go through each piece and sew the liner on. And then I'll be able to start stitching the body of the jacket together, the main sleeves of the jacket together, and then I need to do the smocking of that portion of the jacket. And of course, I need to cut out the button placket and the collar, so I can't forget to do that. But I'm going to pop you into a time-lapse mode, and you can watch as I get this done. Here I am. Here are all of the body pieces of the jacket. They've all been flat-lined with some cotton canvas, with a basting stitch going around basically the seam allowance of each of these pieces. I need to press all of these again. This one might need to be redone. I'm not certain. I might be able to press some of that out. But everything else I'm really happy with. So this is the rough layout. You can see kind of where the darts are. Oops, come on. You can see kind of where the darts are, where the seams are. And then right here and right here are where the sleeves will go. This is a raglan style cut. So there's going to be a diagonal line up the front and up the back, and that will be taken over by the sleeves. I still need to flatline the sleeves. I have them roughly pinned here, but I'm just really happy that I have the actual body done, and Rowan's gonna come help. Buddy. He's very excited by this, apparently. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get this stuff sewn together, and or I guess that stuff sewn together, and then I am going to do the lining on each of these pieces individually, and then I'm gonna sew those pieces together. I just want to encapsulate all of my edges and make sure that they are going to stay intact, and I want a nice solid jacket. So I'm going to remove the cat so he doesn't ruin anything. I'm also going to put all of these pieces away until I have everything flat-lined. Then I can break out the actual liner fabric and get that going. So yes, I'm going to do a cat extraction here. All of my pieces have been flatlined with the cotton canvas and just basted around in the seam allowance, you can see here. And now I've taken my satin and I've laid it out flat, and I'm going to be doing at least the back pieces in this kind of sequence. I'm going to try and replicate this across the whole length of fabric, but the goal is to have almost a seamless pattern in the lining, even though each section is going to be separate. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting out these pattern pieces and maybe start some hand sewing tonight. It's getting kind of late, but I'm really loving working on this project. It's very nice for just quiet time, and I have a candle burning, I'm watching a movie. It's just really, really nice. So I'm gonna keep getting the pieces on here, and then I am going to start sewing. The panels have all been lined with my liner fabric here. Some of them are better than others, but they're all done. So I'm gonna actually top stitch all of these about 1/4 inch in, because I've decided to do a visible stitching method to attach all of these pieces together. And I wanted to give myself a guideline on these edges, to make sure that I do the hand stitching correct. But I also just thought that it would look good. It would add more structure to it. I want this to be fairly simple now that I'm looking at it. This might actually change a bit of what I'm gonna do with the closure in the front. I'm living for this fabric so much. So I'm gonna go ahead and do some top stitching. I moved on to doing hand or machine sewing because I got one panel hand sewn together and decided that I'm not trying to make this like any period accurate kind of garment. So I might as well use my machine so I can do it a little bit neater and a little bit faster, actually much faster. But for Christmas, I got a magnetic hem guide or a stitch guide. So this is gonna help me get perfect, absolutely perfect edges for my top stitching. So super excited to try it out for that. I've been really enjoying it. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on to top stitch and see you in the next clip. As you can see here, all of the jacket pieces have been top stitched and I am super pleased with how it's looking. Here are the tails. I'm super excited for this. This is about where I think where I want the slit to go up to. I'm gonna try it on obviously and test it out first, but everything is looking good. The scales are all pointing the right direction in the pattern of the fabric. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to bring the seams together like so. And I'm basically going to just baseball stitch all the way up these seams using black cotton. It's going to mimic the scale shape for sure, but also I just love this idea of having like an exposed seam, even though the way that I've lined this, there's no exposed seams at all. None whatsoever. It's all encapsulated in each piece. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start going from left to right, sewing these together, and I'm super excited to see how this goes. I thought I would pop in at this point just to show you how I join these two pieces of fabric together. So I am flat seaming these with a herringbone style stitch. And what I'm doing is I have a knot here, and you'll see how I make that in just a second. I'm gonna bring my thread up, first on this right-hand side, to be at about a 45-degree angle against where the seam is. So this flat edge here, it's a 45-degree angle from there. It also happens to be about the angle that the twill is running, and I try to use that as a guide, but on some seams that doesn't work just because of the shape of the seam. So I'm gonna put my needle in from the top into the bottom along my top stitching line, and I'm gonna pull, bring it down, pull lightly while holding it down with my finger, and that helps it stay flat but taut. Then what I'm going to do is bring my needle into the fabric on the right side and then up through the center between the two panels of fabric, and then repeat this on the other side. A little high on that one, but that's okay. And then what I'm going to do is where the top of that one meets, not here necessarily, but up here, I will gather a couple of threads on my needle, pull that through, and then my loop is coming out like this. So I am going to put my needle in through that loop from the bottom to the top and pull tight. And that's my knot. So this seam method is not a really tight seam. You can see there are gaps in between each of these motifs. But for my current project, that is fine. This is a decorative stitch. It also is going to be very helpful. It's a structural stitch. It will hold tight. But if I find that it's gapping too much, I will go in and actually do a solid stitch line to close up all of the gaps. But I figure this also kind of acts as a little bit of ventilation, which I will probably need while wearing this wool suit. So that's it, and I will come back when the piece is getting closer to being finished. The jacket, the body of the jacket has been fully seamed. I think it looks so fantastic. I have it pinned up on the form right now. Just a couple of things that need to be addressed. I still need to do the button placket, although I don't know if it's going to be buttons, wow. But it'll be some sort of closure for the front. I'm half tempted to do a hook and eye closure that looks invisible when you put it on. But I don't know yet. I don't know. I do like the idea of buttons. I love buttons, but I'm just wondering if that's going to be a little too modern. I don't know. I'm still thinking about that part. But what I can start moving on to is the smocking. So if you remember, I needed to do on the shoulders the smocking pattern that looks like this. It's a dragon scale pattern, and it's out of this fabric right here. This is tencel that I wove, and I was really confused as to how I was going to back this and smock it without it being too thick. And my first sample, I used the cotton canvas as a backer, which is quite thick. This, and then I have this fusible, double-sided fusible interfacing. Well, in my stash, I have a lightweight satin. It's much lighter than the canvas, for sure, and it has a lot more drape than the canvas. So I'm going to use this to back or to fuse, stabilize the actual fabric, the tencel fabric. So I did some math. It basically shrinks your panel of fabric, this technique, shrinks your panel of fabric in half, approximately. So you can see here on the sample I did, this is the bottom that has not been smocked at all. It was about 25 inches. Up here, when it's laid flat, this is about 13.5 inches, point to point. But if you were to measure the actual fabric that was smocked, it's about half the size, half the width, half the height. So for my final pattern piece, which is right here, this is the sleeve caps. These are about 19.5 inches wide. Technically it would be a 19.5 inch square, but the top here is cut off for the neck. And so I'm going to need fabric that's at least 40 inches wide, pre-smocking. So I'm going to go ahead and measure out my fabric, this fabric right here, and I believe it's about 22 inches wide, 24 inches wide, I'm not exactly sure at this point. And I'm going to lay two pieces side by side and stitch them up. And I'm going to do that twice, one for each shoulder. So I am going to do that, and then I am going to cut the satin to size, and then I'll interface them together, I'll stabilize them, and then I'll be able to start marking out my smocking pattern. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to measuring and cutting and sewing. I'm just gonna do two of these side by side instead of trying to measure out 40 inches wide. I'm just gonna do a square that way. It'll be easier, and I'd rather have more material than not enough at the end of the smocking. So wish me luck, and I will be back with you in the next clip when I have these pieces well on their way on the smocking front. That took a very long time. So you are looking at the back of one panel of the dragon scale smocking that I am doing for the shoulders of the jacket. And I just spent the last 3.5 hours marking all of this out. So these are marked in 1-inch sections, and that is the size that I'm going to use for the final piece because I think it's a really nice scale size. But yeah, I need to do this with the other piece of fabric as well, so that'll be another 3.5 hours. But I think what I'm going to do is smock this one first and then do the other one. That way I can just kind of get more excited about doing it. Because right now, thinking about doing 3.5 hours of marking again sounds exhausting. But yeah, so what I have here is a sandwich of my satin backing, my woven fashion fabric, the tencel, and there is some double-sided interfacing, fusible interfacing in the middle of those two. I marked the back with my heat erase pens. So what that means is when I am done with smocking everything and I've ironed it down into the scales, all of these marks will go away, and what I'll be left with is just some plain white satin backing. So we will see the smocking threads a little bit, which is totally fine. I'm going to use the gray tencel for the actual smocking thread. That way it blends in. And yeah, I'm really excited to get this going. I do not know how long this is going to take, but it's gonna take many hours. So I think I'm into like mid double digits now at this point with this project, but I would have to calculate all of my time that I've spent so far. So next time you see me, I will either be showing you a clip of me smocking, or I'm already at the finished smocked stage, and you'll see that bit. So I'll see you whenever that is. Alright, so I am at the end of this video here. I was gonna try and finish the main part of the jacket for this video, but it's taking a while. So I feel like if I do that, it's going to be another month before this video comes out. So here we are. You can see I've got the sleeve on one side done, and I have the scales up here. I have most of the body completely sewn, and then I have some of these details that I'll talk about in a future video pinned on. So I am very, very excited for this project to be moving forward, but I need to work on some other stuff to get it done, and it's just taking a while. It's handmade. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the video here. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Please go ahead, if you haven't already, give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already to this channel, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.